Good morning, good afternoon. Thank you for joining this webinar on terminology management and global regulatory compliance. Today's focus is really two parts. One is terminology management, and the second part is really managing your regulatory compliance when companies go global with their products. As you can see on the first slide here, we were posing a question, basically, and that is, are you leaving your company at risk by not properly managing product terminology? And during this webinar, we will show how current terminology management practice that the different companies are kind of lag behind the international regulatory requirements, and the potential for some companies to fail compliance audits, and including product recalls, and sometimes even partially shutting down a business. To get started, we'll talk a little bit about what terminology actually is. Really, terminology is just a technical jargon, words, phrases that people in different trades use to communicate key concepts in product R&D and marketing and sales and communication with customers. Terminology plays a very important role in product quality management because words are very important building blocks of accurate and effective communication. As you can see on the bottom of the screen, these are all terminologies for the specific industry. The first one is central processing unit. That's the common IT term for CPU, which has special meaning for IT professionals. And the other terms are terms in very specific medical fields, like whole blood count. It has a very special meaning. Misinterpretation or mistranslation of the term can have a major impact on the quality of the product and may actually have a direct impact on patient safety. What is terminology management? It's really just a deliberate and systematic process to create and edit and collaborate and update and translate your terminology, as well as review, approval, and signing off. It's a very important process because when companies, having multiple products and they're localizing into many different languages to sell globally, it's not a trivial task to manage terminology. In other words, the process does involve people from various departments: marketing, product R&D, translation, and subject matter experts from various locations to get involved. So it's really a very collaborative and very demanding process. In other words, you need to make sure that all time that the latest version of a term is consistently used across products and across languages. And basically, all the parties must be notified when the change is made to a particular terminology. And again, the goal there is to make sure that the latest versions are always used consistently across languages and products. Why should you manage your product terminology? Obviously, besides a compliance requirement, it really helps companies improve product quality. It reduces your product development cycle, so you can deploy your product to markets faster. So that will translate into increased ROI. And obviously, today's topic, we're going to really focus on the compliance, the regulatory compliance aspect of terminology management. as a life sciences company, you're in a very regulated space. As a company that's developing products for the, for patients and hospitals, the company must be ISO certified, like 9001 and ISO 13485. And one of the central requirements of these standards is to make sure that you have a complete set of paper trail or records, change records, approval records to show for your important product documentation content, including terminology. And so it's crucial that you have this information available, as we'll show in later slides. I'm going to pass the slide to my colleague Richard. He's going to talk a little bit about just the overall compliance requirements for content, for product development, for life sciences companies.
Okay, great. Thank you, Carl. Today I'm just going to give a little bit sort of perspective on the compliance and regulated industry for life sciences. As Carl just mentioned, really the regulations are there to ensure product quality, and of course in life sciences that product it could be a medicine, and it really relates to minimizing the risk and the safety factor for patients. So ensuring safety of people using medicines is pretty tricky. In the life sciences, there's an extensive process and stringent requirements that have to be met before any product can be offered by use for people. One of the requirements is to submit data pertaining to the product to regulatory agencies for review and approval before it can be used. Traditionally, the data submission process has been done on a paper-based system. Currently, the trend has shifted to electronic-based system. And due to this shift, the FDA and other global regulatory agencies have implemented requirements on the submission lifecycle. On the FDA side, one such requirement is the 21 CFR Part 11, which pertains to the way that records in the electronic form are created, modified, maintained, archived, retrieved, or transmitted. It also pertains to how electronic records are reliable and generally equivalent to paper records, as well as how handwritten signatures are equivalent to electronic signatures. So the factors that you see on this slide are some of the considerations that we should be thinking about when developing and complying with regulatory agencies. So content development is definitely very important. When submitting content to the agency, there's really no room for error, right? Whether it's error in grammar, spelling, or use of terms, the consequences can be very disastrous. Considering that a drug can take over 10 years and over $1 billion to bring to market, errors can delay the review of the content and extend the regulatory approval timeline, or even worse, denial for commercialization by the regulatory agencies. So my esteemed colleague later will be speaking more about how to avoid some of these mistakes in the content development process. The second factor is collaboration. Normally, multiple teams are involved in the creation, review, and edit, as well as the approval of documents for submission to regulatory agencies. And these teams are dispersed globally, making communication and really use of visuals quite difficult, which can lead to issues of version control on the content and the document itself. So how can one ensure that the current version of the content or document will be submitted to the regulatory agency? Again, my colleague will be talking a little bit more about that later on. The third factor is change management. So let's move a little further downstream and imagine that we now have a finalized document that can be submitted to the regulatory agencies for review. And for those in the life sciences, finalized documents do not always mean final. There's always last-minute changes to these documents. And for changes to be accepted, regulations state that we must document clearly, who initiated the change, what the change are going to be, the purpose of the change, and who needs to review and who needs to approve and sign off on those changes. So, again, how do you ensure compliance? We'll be talking more about that later. The fourth factor is storage and access. Security is very important. Information in the wrong hands can be dangerous to the business and to the safety of the people. So can you imagine someone with sensitive document residing on the computer just walking away for a break without properly waiting for the sleep mode or shutting down the computer? It leaves the content vulnerable to people who should not be seeing them. Or what about having sensitive documents that are printed and never picked up at the printer? That's also a danger sign. Or somebody maybe unintentionally going home with sensitive document in the briefcase. That's also creates an environment that's pretty dangerous. So that's why there are regulation in place in terms of how that is done, and managing terminology is one important aspect of it. Lastly, there are regulations that mandate having an audit trail of the life cycle of the document, again, whether it's paper or electronic. So likewise, when managing terminology, having an audit trail is an important checkbox that an auditor might be looking for. So now I'll pass it back to Carl, who will talk a little bit more about the benefits of properly managing terminology.
Thank you, Richard. Oh, by the way, we do have like 10 to 15-minute Q&A at the end of this presentation. So our presentation will take roughly 45 minutes, and then we have 10 to 15 minutes for Q&A. As Richard was talking about regulatory compliance, having records for basically all the important tasks you perform it's extremely important to show as proof when your company is being audited by, say, the FDA auditors or the EU regulatory authority. What does that mean when it comes to terminology content? What I mean by that is the paper trail. That actually is just the detailed tracking record for all the important edits that you perform to your terms, such as the creation of the source term, the review, approval, translation, change management, as Richard was talking about, and the actual sign off. In other words, who sign off, who approve the use of each important product terminology. As Richard was explaining earlier, as electronic documents replace paper records, they still would like you to see the approval record for all of your electronic content. Obviously, terminology is an important part of your electronic content. In fact, we've seen studies that show that more than 50% of all the content quality issues, including translation issues, are terminology related. So obviously, if you manage your terminology with a spreadsheet, for example, even though you've captured the source term, the translation of each term in the various target languages, it will be very challenging for you to capture each and every edit that has been made to a particular term or its translation, including its definition. As you can see on the bottom of the slide, there's a physical signature, and that's something auditors like to see when they audit, say, your terminology or electronic content. I want to talk a little bit about the current landscape in terms of terminology management at life sciences companies, because we've seen a lot of surveys. We also contact a lot of these life science companies. Basically, we see a general lack of awareness. Sometimes if we talk to a company, say, do you have a glossary? Chances are some companies say, yes, we do. And it may be in Excel format, for example, just a list of terms with translation. And that's pretty good already. But we often hear other companies, no, not really. We don't have any terminology. Or maybe someone else in our R&D team has something, but we don't know where it is. And not only that, the whole concept of terminology management as it applies to product quality has been somewhat overlooked by quality management professionals, especially when they perform internal audits. There hasn't been a habit of saying, requesting, oh, by the way, can I show the records how your important product terminologies are created, approved, and translated. And obviously, the result is many companies are spending substantial time correcting terminology issues, inconsistency issues, incorrect translation or incorrect usage issues, and that translates into much longer development cycle and poor product quality, as well as putting patient safety at risk. We like to say, if this is the way you're managing terminology, it's not good enough. Not just in terms of quality documentation, quality product, but also in terms of regulatory compliance. As you can see in this, this is just a typical spreadsheet where a lot of companies, we're saying some companies do manage terminology. And unfortunately, this is the way they manage it. Basically, they have a spreadsheet with the source English term in one column and all the target translation in the various other columns. As you can see, one major issue with this spreadsheet is that, first of all, it doesn't have a definition describing what each term actually means. In other words, this is how some companies translate these terms. So they're leaving the task of defining each term to the linguist, sometimes even to the end consumers, to decide, what a technical term actually means. And like you see here, whole blood count. Does it mean the measure of, the white blood cells or red blood cells, or any other combination? So you want to basically accurately define each and every one of your important product terminology. Don't leave that task to the linguist or to the end customers. The other issue with a spreadsheet like this is that there's no way you can keep track of all the revision changes. Let's say I go in somewhere and just modify a translation. There's no record showing when this change is made or who makes it. Obviously, there's not a review, approval process, as you see here. It's just a cell with a term. So obviously, it's not going to pass when it, when your terminology work is audited. And we've been talking about change management because the information do change as we develop products. Various things change. As you can see in this screenshot, the name of the drug has changed. So you want to have, these important changes captured quickly in all of your product terminology. In other words, if someone makes a change to a product terminology, you want that to be immediately notified for all the important stakeholders. In this case, product managers, technical writers, reviewers, and your translators, even your sales and marketing staff. So everyone should be notified immediately. So having a system that manages these changes is crucial. This goes back to the earlier slide where, when you do this type of work in a spreadsheet, it will be very difficult for you to capture these changes. Not only that, each and every change has to be recorded to show as evidence when the auditor shows up. What they want to see is, can I see the history record of all the changes you make to a term? And that's why it's crucial, that you capture all the changes in your system. I just mentioned earlier about automatic notification. Again, this is part of the ISO requirement. Basically, they would like you to have all of your quality documents to be live. In other words, auditors don't like to see a printed version of your quality manual. Why? Because content continuously change and gets updated. If you use a printed version, chances are some of the entries may not be most recent. So that's why with a system that can allow you to not only manage all the changes, but also have a way of notifying all the important parties and always show you the latest version is crucial. Part of the reason, as we've been talking about earlier, is that terminology work requires people from various departments, R&D, marketing, technical writing, translation teams, basically people from various fields, as well as various locations to participate. So you need to have a way of being able to disseminate information quickly, so everybody sees the same version and same translation consistently and every time. As we've been talking about, the general lack of attention paid to terminology management. Obviously, there's a lot to be done about this particular issue. One, obviously, to really train, the compliance managers, auditors, content professionals, and product managers at these licensed companies who realize the importance of managing your terminology. In addition, as we've been saying, in addition to compliance requirements, managing your terminology really helps you improve your product quality, but also, shorten your product development life cycle. We'll have some slides to show you later on to show you what happens if you don't manage your product terminology, because you're going to spend tons of time and effort trying to correct inconsistency errors, translation errors, inaccuracy errors. And the other thing is, we want to say, we must have easy-to-use solutions that companies can employ to manage, their terminology more efficiently without having to invest in a substantial amount of re-education in terms of just learning how to use the tools, or in terms of, cost. I'm going to have my colleague, Tammy. She has many years managing content development at a former licensed company, to talk a little bit about the importance of authoring for life sciences.
Yes, thank you, Carl. I want to talk a little bit about the importance of terminology management for the life sciences authoring, as Carl mentioned. One of the most important things that you need to do first and foremost is to get agreement and consensus on all of your terms, whether it be documentation for manuals or user interfaces or service manuals or any packaging content. It's very important that there's agreement on the terminology going forward so that you can ensure brand consistency, understanding within context, and so forth. Again, maintaining brand consistency is extremely important, especially as most companies are going global these days, hence the need for translation. You want to make sure that you're consistent across the board. The other part that my colleague alluded to was audit findings. Whether you go through an ISO audit or an FDA audit, you want to make sure that all of your documentation, including your terminology database, has been properly created, approved, verified, and there's a paper trail that goes back to that terminology management and your documentation process. This helps obviously ensure regulatory compliance going forward. As you create your terminology database, you want to make sure that you are complying with the regulatory agency requirements globally, whether it's the FDA or the SFDA or whomever it is. The other part that's important is managing your translation budget. With a terminology management tool or database, what this allows you to do is have better control over your translation spend. It eliminates the needs for additional rounds of changes, the back and forth between perhaps in-country reviewers and linguists, so it's a very powerful process to eliminate unnecessary translation spend. Obviously, you want to get your products to market as soon as possible, so as you're authoring for life sciences or healthcare, you want to make sure that your terms are consistent. And then finally, the last part is going back to traceability. As Carl mentioned before, it's important to be able to prove where you introduced those terms, who introduced the term, what type of term it is, and who's signed off on it for use globally in your documentation or your user interface. So there are many factors of terminology management and authoring for the life sciences, and these are just some considerations for today. I'm going to turn it back to Carl for follow-up.
Thank you very much, Tammy. And the next slide, we're going to talk a little bit about accurately defining your product terminology. As a previous slide showed, if you just have a list of terms and the corresponding translations in a spreadsheet, it's not good enough. The reason there is that you do not want to leave the task of accurately defining your terminology to your translators or to even your customers. You always want to define each and every term, proactively. The reason being, number one, it will allow your linguists to do a better job when they perform the translation because they know exactly what you're talking about. I can give an example. We once did a project for a large pharmaceutical company. They were doing clinical trials around the world to get the approval for one of their drugs. And in the product labeling or in the clinical report, they have to put down the side effects. And there's a way to translate a particular term into two different ways into Spanish. One is just basically causes a flu or a cold, or the other way is it causes a heart attack. So depending on how the term is interpreted, it can really be translated into different things. Obviously, it's crucial the term is translated correctly. In this case, the one potential side effect perhaps is just cause a flu-like symptom instead of causing a heart attack. Obviously, if you translate in the second way, the product will never be approved. So it just shows it's important that you define each and every one of your terms so that they can be accurately translated. The other benefit is of defining your term is to make sure that people, including writers and linguists, anybody that has access to your terminology know how to find them. One of the problems we sometimes encounter is that companies have a list of terms, but sometimes people don't remember the specific terminologies used, and there's no way they can find that term. So by having definition for each and every term, you can actually perform a search based on the definition, based on the concept. And that will allow you to avoid duplication. Because what's happened is if someone can't find an existing term for a particular, say, a function or feature or concept, they're going to come up with another one. By doing that, you actually have duplicated terms, basically different terms talking about the same thing. And that's not something that you want to see. And obviously, if you have multiple terms talking about the same thing, if you have to translate that into, say, 15 languages, you're going to get, still many different versions. So that's really opening up, a big can of worms, and that's something you really want to avoid. We're talking about why, the importance of defining a terminology, as you can see in here, it's crucial to accurately define what the term whole blood count actually means. If you don't know the definition, or you interpret the term incorrectly, it can have a direct impact on not just the product quality, but also has direct impact on the patient safety. We've been talking about regulatory compliance, for terminology management. One of the basic requirements for ISO compliance is to show a paper trail, or to show basically a history of changes. Anytime you make a change, it has to be documented. It shows exactly when the change is made, who makes the change, and having a record that shows each and every change for all of your product terminology, including all the translations, is crucial. And it's something that auditors will require. They can, as far as translation, how to translate term, or what translation you use for a particular term, that's something up to the companies. I think we think auditors can care less about how you want to call a term for your product. But what they want to see is to show us a paper trail. What I mean by that is that, as far as Apple is concerned, they can call an iPhone an ePhone. It's okay, they don't care. But what they do care is, okay, show me the record. Who approved the use of this term in your product? Especially you're talking about, customer-facing documents. You want to make sure that you have a record showing all the change history. And the other thing that regulators, auditors like to see is approval record, including all the records for your HR even. So for product terminology, as important as product terminology, they like to see approval records. So for each and every term, they want to see who actually approved the use, not just the source term, but also the translation of each term in the target language for use in your product documents, product labeling, so that there's accountability. And to show approval record is crucial for terminology management and for regulatory compliance. In other words, we've been talking about using spreadsheet. Why is it insufficient? Because it doesn't give you that kind of we call term level sign off. We'll show, because we see some questions there in the by the audience. We'll show you how this thing is accomplished when you use a system that supports terminology sign off. Other benefits of terminology management. Actually, at this point, I'm going to turn the slide to my colleague Uwe Mugi, who is a seasoned professional terminologist, working at he used to work at one of the leading life sciences companies in the world. He also is a major member of the ISO Committee on Terminology.
Thank you, Carl. My name is Uwe Muge, and I'm going to make a few general remarks about the benefits of systematic terminology management for businesses in any industry, regulated or not. And the first good reason for managing terminology is the fact that having a process, having access to comprehensive...
Hey, Uwe.
Yes.
Sorry, Uwe. Can you turn off your, there's an alert box on your screen.
Huh. So you...
Oh, that's okay. I'm sorry. Just on my screen. Forget it.
Oh, okay.
Sorry about that.
Right. So the first good reason for managing terminology is the fact that having access to a comprehensive and well-maintained term base allows writers to simplify the authoring and subsequent review process. In any larger organization, writing, editing, publishing, and proofing typically involves more than one person. And in any team environment, when it comes to word choice, each individual member has his or her own personal preferences. Is it a flash drive, a USB drive, or a USB stick? All of these terms are legitimate, but if multiple synonyms are used for the same item, feature, or function, the writer's message gets diluted and users might get confused. One of the primary jobs of editors and reviewers is to make sure that terminology is being used consistently, both within and across documents. In other words, editors are charged with standardizing, harmonizing, and normalizing the usage of terms of individual writers and groups of writers. And in the absence of a term base that writers can use, editors typically spend a lot of time and energy correcting terminological consistency into documents. In almost any organization, the division of labor is standard practice, and that means individuals with different specializations using different methodologies, processes, and tools are typically involved in the development and launch of a product or service. And when a common term base is in place, all of the contributors in these various functional areas find it much easier to communicate with each other. This diagram lists some of the most common groups and department names you can find in a production environment. More often than not, the members of one group may have very little to no physical contact with the members of the other groups. In compartmentalized organizations, which most organizations are once they reach a certain size, a shared term base is a very effective and efficient solution for penetrating the walls of these organizational silos. The fact that many organizations today have short product cycles makes terminology management an even more pressing issue, because now writers not only need to make sure that the document they're working on is terminologically consistent within all of their current documents, which is hard enough, but with previous versions of documents as well. Let's say an organization releases new versions of their products within a relatively short period of time. That means that each component of the new version of that product must be terminologically consistent within itself and with the other product components. In addition, terminological consistency with the previous version of that product is also required. Why? Because otherwise users who have been using previous versions of that product might get confused. Does that mean writers constantly have to go back and forth between the current version of the document and previous ones? Only if there's no term base in use. Writers who use a term base that's continuously updated have a reference tool that is much easier and less time-consuming to use than working with legacy documents. One way of looking at a term base is seeing it as a repository for the most valuable linguistic assets an organization has. The trademarks, feature names, and labels that are most closely associated with the products or services that organization sells. Establishing trademarks are typically part of a larger branding effort. The primary requirement for any branding to be effective is the consistent use of the various elements of a branding campaign. Inconsistent use of corporate trademarks not only dilutes the brand, but can ultimately lead to the loss of trademark protection. So, from a legal and marketing point of view, it is imperative that trademarks are added to the term base and that writers use only the approved spelling and capitalization of trademarks in their documents. The danger of unintentional translation of a trademark is high, as it is common practice to add a trademark symbol to the trademark only if that trademark is displayed conspicuously, for instance in a headline or image caption. And without that identifier, translators have no easy way of telling a trademark from any other word that they translate, unless, of course, the trademark is listed in the term base that translators use during translation. In other words, a term base that includes trademarks and is continuously updated is a very effective tool for ensuring the consistent use of trademarks in the source text and the prevention of accidental translation in foreign language documents. So far, we've discussed primarily the writing stage of the document lifecycle. In the next couple of slides, I'll examine some of the benefits proper terminology management has on the translation process.
Uwe, you have 3 more minutes.
Okay, I'll hurry up. This is a screenshot of a typical translation memory. And in a translation memory environment, translators no longer have to manually look up terms, which is a time-consuming process. Instead, they can simply press a hotkey while they translate a sentence. Okay, let's talk a little bit about machine translation. One of the problems with free tools like Google Translate is that the user has no control over the outcome of the translation process. Professional machine translation systems, on the other hand, allow the user to upload entire hierarchies of dictionaries, and they can also set a variety of grammatical and stylistic parameters. But once again, the single biggest factor that improves the quality of the output is that if you have terminology available, that will invariably improve translation quality of a machine translation system. Let's skip the slide. This basically shows you another automated tool for checking terminology after translation. So if you have a term base in place, that not only helps during translation, but also after translation. And this is a slide Carl alluded earlier. Here's an example of what happens if translation and editing happens without a glossary. It basically means that there's a lot of extra time and money devoted to fixing differences in opinion between translators and editors. Here is an overview of some of the standards that are currently available that emphasize or that at least either recommend or require terminology management. The QA model of the Localization Industry Standards Association, the Society of Automotive Engineers Translation Quality Metric, the American Society for Testing of Materials has a quality standard, and more recently there's a European standard that also strongly recommends terminology work as part of every translation process. And who's the ultimate beneficiary of consistent terminology work? Of course, it's your user. And back to you, Carl.
Thank you very much, Uwe. Okay, we've talked a lot about terminology management. We only have a little over 12 minutes left. We're going to talk a little bit about TermWiki Pro, because we've been talking about why is it insufficient to manage terminology using spreadsheets. So what are some of the other alternatives? We have created a tool because we've been doing a lot of terminology work for our clients, and we see there's a need to manage terminology so that not only we're able to help our clients with better quality, more accurate terminology for the source content, but also more consistent translation, avoiding some of the rework. But also, we see the importance of creating change records, paper trail, and so that our clients, especially in the regulated industries, can, meet global regulatory requirements. So TermWiki Pro is an online terminology management system that's built for real-time collaboration, meaning people from various offices, departments from around different countries can all kind of log into the system as long as they have internet access and a browser. And the system provides complete revision history. Not only that, it allows the user to roll back to an earlier version if that's something they need to do. And it's unlike some of the systems on the market. TermWiki Pro is designed with the ease of use in mind. It basically uses the Web 3.0 user interface, so it's really designed for terminologists and non-terminologists alike. In other words, it's very much like Wikipedia. If you have seen Wikipedia, even simpler because everything is structured within TermWiki, and it has built-in version control, notification, and live discussion. Because terminology work requires a lot of collaboration among the different people, as I was saying, subject matter experts, product managers, translators, reviewers. So there's a lot of collaboration going on. So TermWiki has a feature that allows them to collaborate and discuss. And there's no third-party software installation. As long as you have a web browser, you can access the system and enjoy the full functionality. And it's highly scalable. As you can see from Wikipedia, it's, every day they have millions of users using it, and more than 3 million entries in many different languages. So we basically use the same platform to develop TermWiki Pro. So the system is quite scalable. Here's just a quick screenshot. It has a very robust user management module. As you can see, these individuals, they're assigned different titles, their target language. So each one has a unique role inside the system. A terminology can add source term. Project managers can create new projects and monitor the workflow. And linguists can translate the terms into the various target languages. Here's just a simple list of the terms, how you view it. So you can click on, you can view the terms by user, by the edit date, by the language, or by industry, or by project. A simple term page, it shows the name of the term, the definition, and these other attributes. By the way, a lot of these attributes are ISO compliant attributes. It shows the category, the product, and shows the translation right here. Not only that, it shows a picture and shows who created the term and the edit date. And one of the things we've done with TermWiki Pro is to create something called TermWiki Widget. It basically allows you to pull terms from your TermWiki Pro and display them on your website, whether as a user help. Say you have a website where you have product documentation. So this is a good way to show the user what each term means without having them leave the site to check out reference. And then the TermWiki mobile version. This is just a version that you can use. As long as you have a smartphone, you can access all of your terminology, including the definition, the translation, hear the pronunciation, and you can add new terms to the system. Okay, now let's just address some of the questions that has been asked.
Okay, James Wilcox would like to know, we were talking about paper trails earlier, so how do you create paper trails with TermWiki Pro? Is this done manually or automatically?
Okay, let me see. I just happen to have TermWiki live. By the way, TermWiki.com is the website. TermWiki Pro, just TermWiki.com/pro with schedule there. Okay, in terms of paper trail, so this is a live TermWiki screen actually. This is a default page usually. Now here are the terms that are recently added. It shows who added them. So if I click on a term, and the definition, you saw this already. See, on every term there is a history tab, and you click on that. It shows the full revision history, like when the term is created and who changed it. Not only that, you can actually compare the changes. To see exactly, like in this case, one word was added to the term. And so you want to be able to show exactly what the changes are, not only when and who made the change, but also what the changes are actually, constitute. And as you can see, this term has been approved. There is actually a sign-off. It shows this term has been signed off by someone. In this case, TEditor. This is just part of the regulatory requirement, meaning you need to show sign-off record, you need to show revision history, and here the revision history for each and every term, including the translated terms. Say, here's, the French term that's been translated. Here's the French term. And again, it has its own history and shows exactly who made the change. Right now, there's only one change. Okay, what's the second question?
A question from Martin Brookman. Can we export term bases from TermWiki into some CAT tool compatible formats? Additionally, can we connect CAT tools like MemoQ directly to TermWiki?
Yes. As you can see, I'm just on this screen here, this menu item. You can export the terms into Excel, to multi-term, TBX, export to XList. A lot of these terms are interchangeable. And what you can do with, you saw the TermWiki widget earlier. There's also a plugin that allows you to, if you're using MemoQ or say Word or other translation environment, you can actually pull terms directly into your translation tool and be able to see the translation. Okay.
Okay, next question. When is the best time to start developing a glossary?
I think that's a question better answered by Wu Bei.
I'll be happy to. I would say as early as possible in the product life cycle. And there have been studies where the cost of where the cost of changing terminology throughout the product life cycle is tracked, and it gets exorbitant. So meaning the sooner you start developing terminology and keeping it stable, the better from a consistency point of view and a cost and efficiency point of view. That's the short answer.
That's good.
Okay, next question. How is terminology management audited per ISO standards?
And that basically is just a detailed revision history I was showing, the sign-off records, because as we've been saying all along, it's all about paper trail. So what they want to see is, yeah, you have these great changes. You made a lot of changes. You're using these terms in your product documentation. You're using these translated terms in the targeted languages. Just show us how you basically created them. And if you change these terms, who changed them? And who actually approved the use of those terms? So as long as you can show those records, those satisfy your audit requirements. By the way, while Wu Bei was answering his question, as because earlier question said, can I export the term into other programs? I just did a quick export just now. You saw live on the screen. See, here it is. Even though we say we do not like you to use a spreadsheet, it sometimes is still a convenient tool for you. Obviously, you want to manage all of your terms in a system like TermWiki Pro. However, sometimes you need to have a reference just to show, not necessarily using live project, but to show you have these terms available. So having a spreadsheet is convenient. So here it just shows these terms. I just exported from a sample project. In this case, cardiology. This project. If there's some terms in there, it's been exported. Okay, what's the next question?
Do you offer separate TermWiki demos?
Oh yes, you have our email. So if you like to see a detailed TermWiki Pro demo, just send us the email. We'll set up a separate session for that.
Okay, when you export from TermWiki Pro to XList or TMX, how is the extra information transferred?
I guess you're talking about the definitions and the part of speech and synonym. As you can see, here's a sample export actually. It shows the English term, the definition, all these other attributes. However, you can turn these off in the system is really what you see is what you get, because you can turn off some languages by just using, the various things in here. Because we've done it so that you can actually view the terms in many different ways. Yeah, you have all of these terms, but how do you view the terms? So you can view them by the user who created the terms. You can view them by industry, by the product category, or you can view them by certain edit date. Obviously, we're only looking at a specific project, so you see these terms. But if you're looking at all the terms, see, this is all the terms in this particular account. So you can, there are several projects in here. If you want to view, say, medical terms demo, then you just click on that, and it will show you, just the medical terms in that particular project. Any other questions? I think that's pretty much all the questions we have. If not, it's just about 1 hour. So thank you very much for attending today's webinar. So if you have any further questions, please write to us. You can either write to us individually or send an email to info@csolvintl.com. Thank you again.